shape or create that job. So I grew up, no one told me you can do this, and I just kind of had to figure it out, which I'll tell you a little bit maybe more in detail later on, like how it happened. It's not as if someone told me, oh, you can be this. Um, Even if I look at some of my friends today, someone would, for instance, you kind of wonder, how do the fashion gets into the shops, and they will tell you this year the color is orange, or next year it's going to be
Yeah.
pink. There are people who's the buyer for Truworths. They've got 3 people. You fly to China, you look at everything that's available, and you say, can you give me 20,000 of this and 50,000 of that? And I need it the year after next year. And that's how they know the color is going to be purple, or now it's brat summer color. So no one really told me. I did journalism, and I was a hard news journalist. And then I just kind of saw after a while that there wasn't really incisive or comprehensive reporting about just television within South Africa, for South Africa, in the way that there is in other countries like the UK and America. And then it sort of, I found it, but it also found me in a sense.
But I mean, if I recall the days when I was a journalist, like at a newspaper, you were invited to launches. So you had pre-screenings where you get a sense of what's the series that's going to come. But that wasn't a specific allocated beat. This is a completely new genre within journalism where you have television journalists or broadcast journalists that focuses exclusively on that. I mean, you had to recreate a little niche for you. In the old days, we used to call it a beat. You'd know that. Today, we talk about niches.
So if you look at, and I'm maybe dating myself, a newspaper, but I still love them, and I
Yes.
still buy them, and I still like physical newspapers. If you start from the front, and maybe your ordinary reader don't really register that, sometimes they do fall into 2 sections or 3 sections when you open them, but there's like a planning and an order in that. And it's hard news at the front,
Mm.
the mom whose kid has died, the politics or whatever. Then it moves on to sort of the economics and the opinion pages. And then you get kind of like your lifestyle pages and the sport pages at the back. And if you think of those sections, you would have like journalists who are crime reporters, court reporters, um, investigative reporters. You will have journalists who literally just cover politics. You have your sports reporters, and you have your journalists who look, financial journalists who look at economic matters. And I was one of the, I was like all of them also at certain
Mm.
points in my career, just not a sports journalist, but I was a financial journalist. I was a hard news journalist. I was a news editor. And when I would go to those things, like as you say, you go to a sports match or a sports conference where they maybe announce a new sports team, or you go to the financial year results of Old Mutual, or you go to anything for politics, or you go like government related, or you
Mm.
go to the building site in George that collapsed. Those journalists know their stuff. They are so, I wouldn't say more hardcore, but it's very real. The moment
Yes.
you go into lifestyle, it's very fluff. They write lots of stuff that's conjecture and rumor and not true. And it would be like Kim Kardashian says an angel spoke to her out of a microwave, or Granny was attacked by a dog, and then the next day the Granny wasn't actually attacked by the dog. But there's never a correction. If you
Mm.
make a mistake in terms of politics or finance or sports, the newspaper will print a correction the next day. And I was just always thinking, why is the lifestyle beat or the lifestyle section sort of like where the women who now have babies go and retire and do sort of less quality work? Or why does that matter less than the other types of news in the newspaper? And unfortunately, the things about film, about television, about fashion, about cooking and food, and all of those kinds of things fall into the lifestyle section, and it's not really covered like news. And then the
Yes.
moment you ask those types of people slightly harder questions or something that they're not, because they also do wrong things, and sometimes really to the extent that politicians or other people uh, uh, make errors or mistakes or whatever, they get very upset because it's almost like as if they've always been treated with like soft gloves and they're not used to real reporting. And the journalists there are also by and large not really um, going into it with the mentality of like, I want to tell the truth, or I want it to be facts, or I want to break news or whatever. It's kind of like, I want to be invited to the next event. It's sort of access journalism. So
Okay.
I I have to always be nice to Lynette. I can't tell her that her hairstyle now looks ugly because then we're not going to be friends anymore. And
Or that you're
meanwhile,
not going
it's
to get
maybe
invited
an
to that gig.
objective. Yes. So I was like, let me do that for television. I want to just kind of report on really what's happening, still also what's on it, but also a little bit about like what went wrong or what led to what you're actually seeing on television or what happened. So also growing up, like I would watch TV and we'd mostly just have the SABC in Craddock where I grew up. We didn't even have, couldn't even like get the signal of SABC3. And I would be, my mom would teach me how the clock works. And I would just know when the long arm gets to the 5 or the 7, it's my story. And I would literally sit there for 10 minutes before, and then it wouldn't come up. And there's no like explanation of why is my episode not on today or why is it sport or what happened or whatever. And when I grew up, I realized that problem hasn't gone away. And lots of the
Hmm.
broadcasters don't feel their own explanation. Like sometimes it's a very simple explanation, like we have to take a presidential speech or something happened, but they wouldn't explain. And you don't know, am I now going to get like the new episode tomorrow, or are we now going to get 2 episodes tomorrow, or a new episode next week, or what's happening? So I'm like, it's like such an underreported field where I feel the more light you shine on it, the more it
Hmm.
will actually be democratized, an industry which is often kind of slipping under the radar when it comes to scrutiny, and it will also actually make the industry itself better.
Do you think that there's a lot of assumptions regarding TV or the TV industry and reporting on it, that you get invited to all these shows, Miss South Africa crowning, that it's all about glamour and that there isn't really substance in that kind of reporting?
Absolutely. So this it's kind of like a prejudice in terms of oh, this is just sort of like a frivolous thing. It's not important. Why does it matter? It happens also with the tourism industry. It happens with the, let's say, the fashion industry. There's a lot of sort of it's kind of like a magician act, and people have bought into it. So you would sort of like a Wizard of Oz type situation. You see the surface level, but you don't realize like at the back, or you see the birthday cake, but you don't realize while that birthday cake for the 5-year-old was baked, that kitchen is quite messy. Um, and there's sort of like these tropes or these lines where there are then interviews with people and they will say, oh, we all got along and we all loved each other and no one fought and everything is just always pretty and stars and moonshine and sparkles. And it's not the case. And the fact that it's not the case doesn't mean it's bad. It's just life. I've not worked at one place where everybody has liked me or I have liked everybody, but we all work towards a certain point or have a certain goal. And the fact that I don't like Jackie on the 4th floor doesn't mean I'm evil or she's evil or that it's an evil place to work here. But for some reason, showbiz feels like, oh, we can't admit that on the cast or creatively or the director or whoever had differences or problems. It's all just perfect. And then when people walk on the red carpet, it's always just like, oh, what are you wearing? Um, Sort of like banal, very superficial kind of
Yes.
stuff. And I don't
Yes.
feel that really serves the viewer or the industry or the public or the, yeah.
In the USA, where and I suppose in Europe, because there are so many channels, the selections are huge, and you can settle in, and there's a lot of info to share. So that's more of an established industry. But in South Africa, where you have to have a good relationship with everybody because they are literally your sources of information. How have you established that kind of platform for yourself in South Africa, though? Moes jy baie mense koffie en tee en
Such a
drank
great
gee?
question. Such a great question. You can't. mm, you're so right. So you depend on the sources, and you depend on like people who have to sort of trust you to tell you their story, and you also have to depend on the contact people. My mom still doesn't understand it. She will often, I will go, that person is the person between me and Sasol. That person is the person between me and Eskom. Um, you're not going to really like talk to Eskom CEO or the SABC CEO if you haven't like worked through, jumped over
Public
little
relations.
hurdles in between, and they want to know, why do you want to do the interview? What are you going to ask this person? Or they will say this person isn't available or isn't available to talk to you, or they don't like your publication, or it's not, you're not as big as the Sunday Times, we don't care about you or whatever. So at the beginning, I started out and I did work through those people a lot. But then as you move through the industry, and I think it's also very important for journalists, you can't just really sit back and press releases and just sort of say what they say, because then you become an extension of the PR machine, and you're kind of like just saying what the companies say. And that's why it's important, I think, for journalists to actually go out to the story, or to go out to a place physically as much as you can, and mingle and strike up conversations and relationships with people who really work in whatever industry it is, whether it's politics or business or sports or whatever. Because if something happens in a sports team, you can still ask the sport team, but they're a corporation. They're going to want to like put the spin on it of like how it benefits them. And if you don't have like a number or contact detail or whatever of a player that you can ask what's really happening in the locker room, or what did the coach really say or whatever, you're only really going to end up always with a very one-dimensional type of reporting. So just over years and years and years, I've established relationships with a lot of people. And what's also sort of interesting is people will always see the face of a show or a movie, the movie star or the TV star or the soap star. And I'm like, it's not that I'm not dissing them. It's not that they're not important, but they're kind of like one element. There's like a whole vast other machine and people who really brought that project to life. And I would, like, when I go to something, it really makes me happy on the inside to like see a director or a camera person or someone of the crew. Not that it doesn't make me happy to see like a soap star, but um, they are the people who will tell you, or the writers or whatever, like how did the story really start, and what was like
Mm.
my idea behind it, or in terms of editing or directing, how did I sort of like create this project that you see. So um, a lot of journalists or lifestyle journalists or whatever, television, because I watch television and I see that soap star. Now I'm at an event and I will go and talk to that person because that person is famous in my own head. And I'm like, you've never broadened your um, horizon to actually look at that end credits and to pause them and to look at the names and to try and remember that, in costume design, I see this name, and in lighting, I see that name. And I kind of see that same name also working on that show or this show. And then when you get invited to a show or event or a party, not to run to the food table or to just stand and drink wine the whole time, but ask someone, is that person who did the costume design or the lighting or the rigging, is that person also here? And go and introduce yourself and talk to that person. So a long answer on a short question, but um, I kind of like went and tried to like get to know these people, not to be their friends, but to just like.
Yeah, I get you. I'm thinking whilst you're chatting, I was thinking that so often in America you do see that there's this particular writer, or if you look at a Shonda Rhimes, for example, how many people even knew until it after decades of watching the show that she was responsible for Grey's Anatomy, for Scandal, for How to Get Away with Murder. Nobody knew that this is the same creator or the writing team. Um, and only with time, and because of television journalists or entertainment journalists, as the more broader term, we get to know that there are people behind the scenes, people are responsible for those amazing costumes on Bridgerton, for example. So let me bring you back to South Africa, because obviously there needs to be a shift in how your work is viewed, because you're an extension of what is on television, and informs you're the middle guy, informs us as viewers when there are changes. So now I've noticed some changes, but I want to ask you, are soapies really, really big in South Africa? I want to ask you, I see a trend to more telenovelas, for example, on certain broadcasting channels. I think that is to save money, so that you buy it cheaply from other distributors, and then you dub it, and then you create a new soapy, and it's to save costs. But you also give opportunities for lesser known artists to showcase what they can do, because they're more voice artists now. So talk a little bit about the shifts that you have seen from the days that we watched what ek probeer nou dink wat techies, for example, or Bracken Jan or Dallas, and how you also see, if you look at the Dallas, if you look at the Dynasty, that there's a resurgence, Melrose 911, Friends, that somehow those classics are making a return. So let's for a moment talk about shifts, not only in South Africa, but in television internationally.
So the reason that we're seeing Frasier again or Beverly Hills 90210 or any of those shows that we grew up with is because we now are sort of, I would say, in the middle of our lives, or the lives where we kind of make money and we can be consumers. And then they go, oh, we now want to sell ads, or we want to promote products to those people. So we're going to bring their show back, that they will remember. The faces might be a little bit older, but the story or the idea is still the same. So we're bringing a Murphy Brown back. And then what happens is, because people might have forgotten about that show or haven't watched those episodes, but now we can put that show on a streamer like a Melrose Place, the old episodes. But if we do a little bit of new Melrose Place, it gives more value to that back catalog as well. So then we put the 10 seasons of a Melrose Place on streamer X. And as a streamer, we say we're going to do like 20 new episodes of Melrose Place, and then people might watch the new one. But so it's something for the people who want to relive the nostalgia. They remember the old one and they watch the new episodes. And people who might not have ever watched the old one will now go into the back catalog. It's also there. And then we keep them longer on the platform or on our channel. And then in terms of the changes, because traditional broadcasting is so under pressure from streaming, the budgets get cut, or they just have like less money. They can't do really everything anymore in terms of a buffet of we're doing kids TV, we're doing sports, we're doing drama, we're doing comedy or whatever. ETV still does that. The SABC still does that. It will be interesting to see for how long they will be able to continue. But even if you look at like Mnet, they've long ago stopped doing like a 100 in terms of like, oh, we're offering every genre or whatever. So the TV channels are really under a lot of pressure in terms of being able to be everything for everyone. They're becoming a little bit more niche, like the pay TV channels. So you get like a travel channel or a cooking TV channel, and we're going to see maybe the broadcasting channels sort of move a little bit more to that way, and they struggle. So but for instance, the reason why Seven the Lion was cancelled and Isidingo was cancelled or Tobilling was cancelled or Igoli was cancelled and things like that. It's just such expensive shows with such, if you think there's a lot of, if you think of like a soapy, how many people you see on screen, there's even more people behind the screens. It's almost like a little primary school or a little high school in a rural. I grew up in Craddock and our whole school was 300 people. And if you think of like a soap or telenovela, there's more than 300 people working on a show like that. And you have to pay their salaries, but you also have to pay for every single thing that you see on the screen, from the couch to the flower to the wallpaper to the actors. So it's becoming sort of like unsustainable for us to have so many in South Africa, in terms of like these vast shows, because it's so almost like little cottage industries or factories, and there's not
Yes.
enough viewers really to sustain all of them, and they also at the same time. So you would get like three of them at 7 o'clock, and there are just not enough viewers to really watch all three of them and have all of them successful. Maybe in America you can have three of shows at 7 o'clock, and they'll all have like enough audience to be profitable, but it's not really the case anymore for us in South Africa.
So, do you see explain to me how you see things are going to change? Are you finding that less original content, or yes, original content, but with slashed budgets because you must make do? But there's an expectation that your deliverables still needs to be high. Because if I look at the knock-on effect of the strike, of the writing strike last year, and how many people even after COVID were put out of jobs because there was either not a budget or you just couldn't pay for a crew. So there is a crisis in the USA, for example. Do you see that there's a knock-on effect of that industry to what's happening in South Africa?
You can almost look at the movie. So people will often ask me, why do we not really get like a original? I can't remember the last time I went and saw like a Titanic or a Jurassic Park, and now I have to watch Jurassic Park 6. And I'm like, because the people who make this entertainment, they make entertainment, but they're still in business. They want to make their money back. And because the things are so expensive, the risk is so that they don't want to waste that money. So they go for the safe option. So if we make Trolls 5, we know even it might not do very well or it might not do great, but it will do good enough for us to make our money back. And that's why we see these franchises like a Mission Impossible or Impossible 9 or a Fast and Furious 18, or why we see maybe generations just going and going and going, although it maybe have like run out of steam, because we'll rather go with the thing that we know instead of risking something brand new and taking a much bigger chance that it might flop or that it might not resonate with viewers. So in television, people will rather go like, oh, I'm going to buy a franchise and then conversion of MasterChef SA or a South African version of a Survivor instead of like something brand new because I don't know if it will work.
So, if you look at what's been happening to DSTV in South Africa, for example, where are we at? Is it a case of people feeling, well, I'm not getting value for my money? Is it a case of people feeling, you know what, I just don't have that money, that luxury to spend? And let me decide, where will I invest if I do have to pay for streaming, if I do have to pay for a bouquet of whatever, it's going to be tailored to my preferences. What's been happening there? Or is that literally just the consequence of what's happening in the world in terms of consumers and television patterns?
What's so interesting? So if you look at like DSTV, they've lost 1.6 million subscribers over just a year, which is shows you that, or let's rewind a little bit. If you think of like what a new car costs, it costs a lot, or even the top end a vehicle like a BMW or a Mercedes Benz. So obviously I'm a journalist, I'm not one of those people, but the rich people will buy cars or yachts or penthouses, and they don't complain about the price because they're willing to pay, although it's a big ticket item, they're still willing to pay that because it still offers them value on that level. The same happened with DSTV, where people would be like, this is expensive, but I feel like I'm paying for what it's worth. And whether something costs 10 Rand or 1,000 Rand or R1,000,000, people will not even pay 10 Rand if you feel that this avocado is fraught and isn't good quality, it's old, but you're willing to pay a fair price or even a premium price, let's say for like, you go like, these oranges at Woolworths is really expensive for 50 Rand, but they're going to last longer than oranges maybe at another shop. So for a long time, DSTV has, it's always been expensive because it's paid television, but the calculus that the consumer made was that it is worthwhile. I'm paying a lot of money, but I'm getting what I'm roughly pay for. And clearly, when you suddenly lose 1.6 million people in 1 year, whether it's like on whatever package as DSTV Premium or the cheapest people, the people on the paying for the cheapest package like a DSTV Access or whatever, it's a very clear signal that the person who bought the penthouse or the Mercedes Benz or the 20 Rand oranges no longer feel that that product for what I'm paying is worth the price. So if I'm an executive at MultiChoice, I would have to like go and sit, and hopefully they do it, like take a long, hard look at what is the best offering given all of the competition and all of the options that people have available. For a long time, it's also sometimes been a case of my customer doesn't have an option of going to another shop. So if I'm the only one selling the oranges, they have to pay 50 Rand. And now people can maybe get an approximate service on a Netflix or something and pay a little bit less you might also get a little bit less, but you actually get more at a lower price. And then people go, okay, I can't pay 500 Rand for DSTV, but I'm willing to pay 100 Rand. I'm not going to get the sport or some of the entertainment options or lifestyle content or whatever, but I'm willing to settle at a lower price. Even though I get a little bit less, it's still 80% of what I was looking for or whatever. And as more and more South Africans come online and are willing to buy data and are willing to spend data on streaming entertainment or to like get video entertainment, I think all of the existing broadcasters and pay TV and all of these like existing ones that we've had will have to take a long, hard look at where are they and what value they offer for the consumer in an attention economy to go, I want your time, and this is what I'm going to give you back for your engagement with my platform.
I love the fact that you talk about the attention economy, because that is what it comes down to, holding that viewer's attention and then capitulating on that with either added products. You said resurgence of certain shows that we see returning, because you're creating a new demographic, you're creating a new audience, and an audience that are captive. You're able to sell merchandise to them because you brought them in. So let me welcome those that who's joined us on the replay of this live stream. If you've only joined us now, I'm chatting to Tinus Ferreira in South Africa. He's known as TV with Tinus. That's the brand that he created for himself. And he watches television shows for a living. I said to him earlier on, biggest flex, reporting on what's happening in the industry. So if you've only joined us, that's the background and what we've spoken about so far. Is the changes not only locally, not only in South Africa, but also internationally. But Tinus had to create this gig for himself. He had to create and establish partnerships where people come to him and ask him. Do you often have to lead a lot of those public relations companies? They just issue you with a press release and want you to post it just like that, and you want to actually add some bells and whistles to it, and you want to take another angle to that. Did you have to educate them also in the way they communicate with you and the way you communicate then and relay that for your audience?
Almost every day. And I'm sure, yeah, it happens every day, every week. It happened yesterday. I'm sure it's going to happen tomorrow. Um, and maybe also like a public access message that if you're going into public relations, or which is also a job that you can do within the media space or whatever, because that also happens. Everyone wants to be a real estate agent, or everybody thinks they can open a restaurant, or everybody maybe thinks they can become a publicist. Being a publicist, so like what often happens is like we will have PR companies, and they were like the PR company for, let's say, Pick and Pay. Now they pitch and they want to be the PR company for Netflix. But there's a differentiation between the thing that you used to speak about with media before as to now. And you need to also sort of know that industry to be able to be effective in terms of what the messages is, or what it is that you want to tell about that company or about those people. And a lot of them are not. So they will know maybe the 20 journalists. Let's say you were the PR company for a politician, like let's say Helen Zille. Your contact list are journalists who cover politicians, and now you pitched, the company gave you the contract, and now you're going to send out, let's say, maybe press releases about a TV show on ETV, but you don't really know who's, like, it's other journalists.
Yes.
And you're just obliviously sending out these press releases that you wrote as email blasts to the media, but the media are not really the media that you should be talking to. It's there's other people, or it's another section at the newspaper or at the broadcaster. So it still happens every day where I have to track down people and go like, oh, are you, so like you mentioned Miss South Africa, for instance. So I'd be like, hey, I see there's press releases. This year it's going to be on SABC3. I didn't get those press releases. How does it work? Do you have the show logo? What's happening or whatever? And then they will just sort of say like, yes, we'll add you to the contact list and we'll send you stuff. And I often think you should have just Googled. You should just have Googled, and you can like find
Do the homework.
easily 5, 6, 7 people.
Yeah. I often see that as well. People send one press release, it does not get adapted or amended for the various journalists or publications, because everybody has a different market, everybody has a different audience, the way they communicate. It's not a one size fits all, and that's the public relations part. But I've also seen within the industry, people assume, okay, because this looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it has to be a duck, but it's not a duck, you know. So I see that there isn't an understanding of who are you talking to, and I see it within television as well, within broadcasting. I want to bring you back to where you find yourself now in your life. There's so much that you've covered, and you literally have to have your ear on the ground to know what changes are coming, because people look to you. Why is my soapy not in that time slot? People are creatures of habit. If they watch the news at a certain time, they expect the news at a certain time. If they watch the soapy at a certain time, they plan their lives around that. So messing them around, in my opinion, is disrespecting them, disrespecting their attention, like you spoke about attention economy, disrespecting their time and the value that they place on that particular product. And that's the quickest way to lose the loyalty that you've invested in for so long. So I can imagine we've seen when Seven de Laan, for example, and some other soapies on other channels came to an end, people feel that they've lost a family member because they become attached. They form a relationship, even though they've never engaged with that person face to face. They form a relationship, they form a bond, they become loyal. And this is why the viewership for those various, and that's the justification, the viewership for those various shows are built over time. You don't disregard and wipe it off the table just because of an executive decision, because what you've put in and what you've gained. I mean, you spoke about, we see it in this live streaming. If you cannot hold the attention and build on that, and it becomes a brand, then you're missing the boat, you're missing the opportunity.
What also irritates or angers me sometimes is, and once again, it's not unique to television or film or the entertainment industry. A lot of people are in it because it's just a job. They took a job
Yes.
so that, and I understand it, so that you get debit orders that are going to go off at the end of the month. But there's not real passion in it, and you're in a job where you don't really want to know about it, or you do the bare minimum, and then a lot of these people make decisions that's not really the best or the most informed decision. And as you so rightly say, it then trickles down and it affects the person right at the bottom. What I also don't really like is that a lot of people would still sort of dismiss television or radio or people's pets or whatever as, oh, it's not really important. And I'm like, for millions of people in South Africa and around the world, that radio that's on the whole day, or that television that I have that appointment with tonight at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, or my pet or whatever, is not really my life. It's really my family. It's really part of my family.